impact is really important. When we talk about those partnerships, we have to partner with local communities. We want to look at what a sustainable model is and an ideal model for impact and really kind of tie that in. That's part of the major storytelling of how communities can lead with self-determination and resilience. So it's really about the connection between your mission, how you're executing your mission, why it's effective, and then connecting it to why someone is there with you and thinking about donating to you or supporting in some way, shape, or form.
Welcome to the Imagine Podcast Resilience Roundtable today. I'm here as the host of the Imagine Podcast and co-facilitator of the Cultivating Joy Challenge for year-end fundraising that we're leading this season, where we connect impact leaders and stewards with the strategic practices and platforms that power their growth. Our year-end challenge focuses on fundraising, helping each participant organization create a campaign to start. And in the process, they're cultivating joy in their community and their organization. And I'm here with Leilani Yats, who's the Executive Director of Seeds for a Future and founder and Chief Experience Officer of Naturally Smart Travel. She loves meeting people, so this is a great thing to do together with her. And she supports them in connecting and growing. She offers tour experiences to permaculturalists. She's helping to launch a food security academy in about a year from now, with a person-to-person experience that they're planning. And so now we're just going to dive in and get started. Leilani, I'd love to invite you to introduce yourself and start with telling us about your early days, like what first drew you to the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much, Adriana, just for having me here. I'm kind of a global traveler, always have been since the beginning. Being from the States and bouncing around, it was a very early introduction to different cultures and people, and just understanding that the world is a very vast place with a lot of experiences to welcome. And I should say I have a hospitality background in a completely different life or a past life. But it eventually led me to Los Angeles, where I was in the startup industry, and I had the awesome opportunity to work with a number of tech CEOs in helping them grow their teams and eventually internationally with their products. So with that, I was able to really harness a few skill sets that otherwise probably wouldn't be able to, and was really just excited to take those skills and be able to apply it to, rather than a corporate structure, a nonprofit structure, or just giving back to the world in a more meaningful way. Back in 2017, I moved to Guatemala, and that wasn't initially what the goal was. It was just to come visit and to volunteer here and kind of get to know a different part of the world that I hadn't experienced before, and very quickly realized that what I was missing in life as far as community and opportunity to give back and all of the great things that I think help us become more purposeful and mission oriented in our lives started to grow here. So I've been here since January of 2017, and along the way have had the pleasure of getting to understand what's happening on the ground floor as far as social and environmental change, not just here in Guatemala, but throughout Central America. And again, just leaning into the experience of traveling myself and the hospitality background for over a decade, realized that the experience that I had in discovering Guatemala was probably something that a lot of other people were missing in their lives too, or maybe they were interested in developing. So I started Naturally Smart Travel in 2021, and the entire purpose of it was really just to give people the chance to be able to sign up and to buy the ticket and to experience and discover and follow their curiosity and better understand different cultures within the lens of impact. With Naturally Smart Travel, we work with organizations that are based in the US and are supporting different communities here in Central America. That way we can connect them with culture to really understand the people that they're serving through either their investment or through their donorship, as well as just understand their day-to-day and what their lives are like, what the resources are that they have. There's a huge cultural focus on truly getting to know those communities. And aside from that, also blending in adventure so that we can really understand, get to know, and explore different aspects of what each country offers. And then the impact. When we think about that day-to-day kind of understanding what are the needs that the communities have, what are they being met with as far as those resources, and what is the need beyond what they're receiving, and how can we all make a difference? Because it's really great to know what's going on, and we can talk about this a little bit more, but data is easy to read from a data sheet or a report or anything along those lines, but to really experience it one-on-one, it's the connection that I think we all miss as human beings and that we're really missing right now. Yeah, Naturally Smart Travel has been a really awesome experience. About 3 years ago, I was introduced to Seeds for a Future. I'm now the executive director and super grateful for the experience. Essentially, what our program does is we connect with families in rural communities across Guatemala. And we have three parts to our program. One is just over a year of mentorship teaching nutrition. It's nutrition for families as a whole so that we can see household impact. It's working directly with women who are pregnant on the first 1,000 days program to help their health improve and the health of their babies improve. The second part of the program is really working with these families to teach them regenerative gardening practices. We lean into permaculture really heavily. It helps the environment and it also reduces chemical consumption. So we plant a full garden. And I love to say that we meet people where they are because sometimes they'll give us land that's as big as a coffee table. And sometimes they'll give us land that's as big as an entire house. So whatever it is that they're willing to give us, we meet them at their capacity or we develop their capacity so that they get vegetables, they get fruit trees. Sometimes they have animal husbandry. So they're welcoming chickens or ducks, sometimes rabbits and fish, so that they can have sustainable protein sources. And then the third component is if they're able to harvest and have a great enough harvest to sell any excess, then they will set up a little shop. It's nothing crazy, but it's just setting up a table right outside of their home and selling that organic food to their community, which is really helpful for household income.
I love hearing those details and that you meet people where they are or develop their capacity and from small plants to fruit trees to animals. I was just reflecting how my co-leader Abigail and I met you way back in December 2020, I think it was. It was ImaginePod's first ever online training webinar. So now we've had about 5 years of knowing each other. And it feels really special to have a longtime friend here who keeps coming to our programs, this year's spring cohort, our summer camp, and now our year-end challenge. I'd love to hear about your successes in your work with donors and the connection that you build through partnering and through tours and everything that you do to help set up the stage for people to be really engaged as donors.
Yeah, absolutely. So more and more, and it leads back to what we were talking about before, that lack of connection that we might not know we're missing, but that we're all secretly craving is just being able to build community and understand others and build those connections however possible. For a lot of donors, it's easier for them to donate forward to a specific cause that speaks to them, something that they're able to connect with on a personal level, being the change that they wish to see in the world. And they step up by donating forward. And like we talked about before, it's so easy to read data and to see what the impact is, to see the difference in the numbers over time and all of that. It can be easy just to read a report and then set it down and just feel some level of satisfaction or question. But I think for donors to be able to connect directly to communities, it's so meaningful for both parties, for anyone that's involved, because they're gaining this new experience. They're getting to see the world from a different perspective. They just get to walk into a tienda, for example, if their focus is on women's empowerment. Maybe Maria down the street is taking out a loan so that she can fill her tienda. It's great to be able to read that in a report, like I said, but to walk into that tienda and actually buy something for Maria and to be able to hear her story directly from her is something that's completely different. So being able to connect on that level is something that's really important. And I always say from our tours, there's a moment where the light bulb goes off and where someone has already stepped off the plane. They're in this new land and they're experiencing all these new sensations of new smells, new foods, new music, new people, new language. And eventually, once they actually get to shake hands with the beneficiaries, there's just this level of understanding and appreciation on both sides that the donor wouldn't get otherwise. So that level of personalization is something that they really, really value. And when you see that light bulb go off and their senses, or I guess their barriers, start to come down, and they accept that they're here and they're with someone that they've been able to make an impact on in some small way, it's really, really meaningful for them. And then, of course, for Maria on the other side of it, more often than not, she's not going to see a donor. She's not going to see any sort of leadership that's further on, that someone that lives in a different country, just along the timeline and the process that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So for her to be able to connect with someone and know that they chose to give and that they chose to come down and see her and support her in person, it's just such a beautiful exchange. That's certainly a win, is just realizing the level of connection that donors currently receive, and then how much more we can do to really connect them with the mission, with the purpose, and with the people.
Beautiful. And stepping back a little bit further, before they've had this personal experience, it can be really challenging asking for a donation, especially in some cultural contexts. Like I've heard Keturah has powerfully described how difficult it can be to ask for money in the culture of Nigeria in which she works. If this is before a tour has happened, can you describe how does this connecting and experiencing connection personally help with that ask? If you can think back to a moment that felt difficult or scary to make an ask of a donor.
Yeah, I think at first, and I'm still very much in this space, I'm relatively shy, and making that ask is just something that we naturally just have to get a little more comfortable with over time. Still working on it. You hit on it in the intro, is just remembering that we're not there to ask for the organization, or it's not about us and what we're feeling or our nerves. It's about serving the people that are within the communities and thinking about the potential of impact if we ask someone for a certain amount of funding. So usually what I'll do is just think about the Marias out there in the world, and how much was it that she needed to stock her entire tienda? How much does a coffee farmer need to get his next row of coffee trees planted? This is something that's really important, but just prepping in advance and having different areas of your program outlined and understanding what can serve an individual, what can serve a community, what can serve the entire program, and having those costs outlined so that while you're talking with whoever the funder might be or with a foundation, that hopefully you've done the research in advance, but if it's a quick elevator pitch and you're talking with someone, that you can easily cite how much different aspects of the program are on different levels. And then, yeah, just harnessing in and just knowing if this is your only opportunity to talk to someone, that you're at least engaging with them and you're taking the social cues, and you just let them know for the 70 to 90% of the children in Guatemala who are malnourished or undernourished or facing nutrition disease, what is it that we can do to best serve you in being able to reach those children, because that's something that you're incredibly passionate about. There are a couple different parts to the conversation, but essentially in the core that I think we should keep is that we're serving others, and how can we best serve others and take chances that are needed in the moment that they're needed.
Great. So it sounds like you're stewarding donor intent while figuring out where it aligns with what the community needs. And I love hearing that you're shy. The proudest that you've been so good at getting out there and creating partnerships. I'm sure there are lessons learned along the way, like things that have been difficult and negative. Can you tell us about some of the pushback that you've heard for the work that you've done?
It's really interesting, and I don't want to get too heavy into politics or anything along those lines, but there are so many organizations that have focused on malnutrition, on food security, on women's empowerment, those sorts of things. And we usually will work collectively. We'll be aware of what's happening in community, and we just want to know what's happening within the industry or the sector. So it's been relatively positive, but I will say that from an organizational level, sometimes we'll meet with families, and this is kind of a highlight, but we'll get back to the pushback. Here in Guatemala, at least, and I know it's experienced throughout Central America, there are a lot of people who are migrating to the border of the US. And with that, it's often men. might be head of household, and they're going up to the US. So that puts women in a really difficult position of having to be head of household, and they're not necessarily raised to build those skills. They don't have those skills inherently because the culture is so traditional with male and female roles. One of the things that we see is, of course, welcoming women into these positions and helping train them into just having different skill sets so that they can support their families fully. But sometimes we'll run into dynamics, family dynamics that are, again, traditional. And if a woman or a mother or a wife is stepping into a role where they're empowered, often their husbands might feel uncomfortable with that. And if they don't understand that female empowerment is equal to family empowerment, then the husband might be threatened. That's a level of pushback that we often get, at least from the community, is from time to time, we'll have an encounter with someone who isn't well prepared for that amount of empowerment within their family.
Thank you. And it sounds like also on a broader level, there's been pushback from environmentalists about travel, and you've been working
Oh,
on carbon credits. Can you say more about that? Like how people can pay it forward?
yeah, you're very right. And thanks for bringing that up. I think with naturally smart travel, even with the impact focus and even with giving back to community and paying it forward, there still is a huge question with the environmental impact of travel itself. So even though we're relatively close to the US, which is often the demographic that we serve, those flights still take at least 1 ton of carbon each way. So we think about the level of consumption while they're in country. We think about the level of waste that they're creating and exhaust that they're creating and all of the elements that contribute to their footprint while they're in country. One of the biggest things and probably the greatest ways that we can help offset that is by working with the local community and finding ways to offset. So there is a really wonderful organization called TRL. They're based here in Guatemala. They are indigenous run, from my understanding, for the most part. And they steward the land. So they were able to receive accreditation from a university in Europe, and they process carbon credits. So what Naturally Smart Travel does is we total out what the footprint is for each of our guests, and then we work with TRL and another organization to offset. So we pay it forward, and they take whatever our donation is for offset, and they actually hire someone to steward the land. They reforest a specific area of Sololá, which is a department in Guatemala, and they make sure that there's biodiversity so that it's not just one specific plant or one specific tree, but they're truly reforesting as nature would. Another thing that they do is they install efficient rocket stoves. There is less exhaust coming into the home for the women who are cooking, and there's less wood that's required. So there's less of an environmental impact. There's less wood that's required, which means the women don't have to go out and buy wood. And then that means there are less trees that are being consumed or chopped down. So that's usually something that we like to talk about with our guests so that they understand it's not just about coming down and having this experience and being able to, like we said, consume. It's also about giving back and making sure that we're leaving our space or the space that we've connected with at least sustainable, if not regenerative.
Beautiful. Now, people whom we talk with, people who are here in this session live and who will listen to the recording will be from a variety of countries. We have partners like the Bloom Network and others that will be sharing our podcast episodes. I know that you've thought about creating donor experiences in other countries, and we have 2 people who are here from Nigeria and Portugal. Does anything come to mind for creating donor experiences in other countries from the experience that you've had and the research that you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful to be able to start with an organization and to lean into their donor base and share these experiences. But something that's not that far off is actually inspiring people who are potential donors and creating these experiences or travel opportunities where they can connect directly with whatever their passion or their purpose is. Just leaning into, we'll say, food security in agriculture, because there's so much monoculture throughout the world and because there's a lack of food security throughout the world. Coming and visiting Keturah and understanding what level of malnutrition is being experienced in her country and what level of food security exists there. would be something that we could do. So creating opportunities for people to travel and see what organizations on the ground are doing. It might be someone that's focused on nutrition. It might be someone else that's focused on food security. It might be on women's empowerment, but just helping donors understand what's needed on the ground and then connecting them to the communities on the ground. Being able to do that would require an assessment of the country as a whole, and then really finding strong partners that we'd be able to visit and just developing those relationships and eventually just ideally welcoming these really big-hearted and open-minded individuals to come and have a really awesome experience.
Great. I love that you talk about finding partners to do it with, because then you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. There can be the right talent that's ready to partner up with you and create the next experience.
Absolutely.
One more question before we go into talking about the template that we've created for today. We are always evolving as people and as professionals. I'd love to just hear you think on the fly. What might be a powerful new decision for you and your work to see you to the next level of making a difference in your community you serve and your donors? So if I were to start a sentence with "I have decided" or "I am ready to," or something that's powerful and juicy, what might it be for you?
I am ready to just begin building those partnerships. That was a perfect segue into something that I've been discussing with different donors. I just got done with 2 donor trips, which were absolutely amazing. One of the common themes that we've discussed is partnerships. Everyone knows that we're better together. Sometimes in different cultures, in different communities, you'll find that there's a silo effect where they don't share resources or really help others understand what it is that they're doing in detail. Through partnerships, we better understand one another. Like you said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel and we can actually lean on one another. With Seeds for a Future, for example, we have our base program. And now, especially going into 2025, we decided that our focus would be finding different partnerships to add, I like to say, quality of life improvements for the families that we serve. So we partnered with Water for Life, for example, and we began distributing water filters that can last anywhere from 3 to 5 years for those families that we serve. And we started working with a couple other partners who visit the families and do family health assessments or do female cervical screenings to help reduce cancer rates. When I think about looking out into the world, I think about expanding the Seeds for a Future footprint by sharing our model, which, as you said, with the Food Security Academy, we'll be doing next year. And in line with that is building partnerships to begin supporting that model and the expansion of the model.
Excellent. And right now, as we move into the next part of our conversation, Leilani's 3-part donor experience model, and Leilani will walk us through it and share how she uses this model for naturally smart travel and other work that she does so that donor experiences can be more and more powerful rather than surface level.
Awesome. So this document is pretty straightforward. I'm very excited to walk through the 3 ingredients that we try to blend into every one of our travel experiences. And I know that we talked about it briefly, but when we look at impact, adventure, and culture, those are the 3 that create the recipe for success. Again, when people are coming down, it doesn't matter which country they're from or which community they're from. Understanding impact and just meeting people where they are to look at things from the ground level is super important. What we ideally want to do is just really see, again, what is the change that someone wants to see in the world? And how can we connect what their passion and their purpose is to where it is that they are? I think to just looking at the community and understanding how to implement that successfully is really important. So when we talk about those partnerships, we have to partner with local communities. More often than not, people can come in and they can have a solution and they can share that solution, but we want to look at what a sustainable model is and an ideal model for impact and really tie that in. That's part of the major storytelling of how communities can lead with self-determination and resilience. And ideally, your model or your mission is helping feed that. So you want to exemplify that as much as possible. I think too, sharing, going back to storytelling, but sharing how you're unique is really important as well. It's really about the connection between your mission, how you're executing your mission, why it's effective, and then connecting it to why someone is there with you and thinking about donating to you or supporting in some way, shape, or form. Demonstrating impact is really important. Being able to do that in person is really excellent. And if you're not able to do it in person, then at least being able to share impact. I went to Climate Week a couple of weeks ago, and Andrew Zimmer spoke. One of the biggest takeaways from joining Climate Week was he said that donors pay for impact. They don't pay for workshops and they don't pay for information sessions. They pay for impact. So as long as we can demonstrate that impact in a meaningful way, that's how they're really going to feel connected to the organization. As far as adventure, we really do have to think about, again, why did this show up and why are they so connected to your specific mission and model or your organization? And just thinking of fun and exciting ways to be able to connect them. If we're talking about a trip, for example, we welcome people down and we want them to experience the country. How can we help them experience the country, the community, the people on a different level? Then what level of preparation do we need to be able to ensure that they're enjoying their experience? With this, it might be telling someone that or promoting that part of a tour is hiking a volcano, for example. Not everyone's going to be prepared to hike a volcano. In speaking about a volcano, that might be a metaphor for their giving or their experience with the organization. What level of preparation do they need to be led up that volcano to reach the summit with you and with the communities that you're serving? And how do you ensure that they're getting the best experience possible or you're feeding the best experience possible for them? I think just coming up with different ideas and thinking from different perspectives is really important. And then as far as culture, how can you just connect the donor directly to the impact and the people that they're serving through your work? So just connecting those dots is really important.
The last thing before we go into Q is to show your fundraising page that you created as a draft.
I appreciate that. I love Give Butter. Give Butter is so wonderful, just as far as an organization and what they give consistently to the community, but also just the platform itself, especially through the workshop and really through the workshop, just understanding the different features that we can take advantage of. And they're just so helpful for different areas of donation. I'm really looking forward to working with you on developing our strategy for end of year giving. So that'll be fun.
It seems like you're somebody who really thrives in working collaboratively. You talked about people getting out of their silos and sharing resources and joining cohort type experiences for your own growth and development and for your organization. Seems like one thing that you keep doing for yourself. And probably not just with ImaginePod, but you're probably in other groups as well.
Yeah, I truly believe that we're better together, and you can't say it enough. We can probably hashtag it all over this world. So the most important thing is just, especially when you're in the nonprofit world, it can often feel like you're in a silo and it can be kind of difficult, especially for leadership, being able to connect with others and just realize that you're not just operating as an island. There's a whole chain of islands that are out there and we're all doing our thing. For us to come together and to just lean on one another is really beautiful. I live in Antigua, Guatemala, and one of the things that I'm very excited about, we actually just had our monthly meeting last night, is we bring together women who have businesses. It's not just nonprofit work, but it's also for profit with purpose. And we get to sit as leaders of these organizations and just share, one, our elevator pitch, then two, testimonials about one another, just so that we can hype each other up and get each other excited. And then three, we just really want to make sure that everyone understands what's happening out there. We're sharing resources, we're sharing experiences. Sometimes, if we have enough time, we'll sit down and someone can raise their hand and just share a difficulty that they're experiencing. Or if they want to celebrate something, then they have a whole crew of people that are there celebrating with them. As far as community and connection, I just think that it's a really important aspect of life, whether it's professional or personal, that we can pour ourselves into. So this is our Give Butter campaign that I developed during the summer workshop, which is really awesome. And essentially what we were looking for was just an opportunity to support micro business. Just being in the workshop was able to come up with a strong title just for the project itself. So this is our team. And you can see, let me see, the woman in the center that has that really beautiful belt. So she is one of our program members, and everyone else that's a part of this photo is part of the Seeds for a Future team. So this is just a photo that was taken when we were visiting her and she was able to share her garden. We got to meet two of her children as well, and they were very fun and super interactive, and they just wanted to be as playful as possible and welcome us into kind of that vibe. So yeah, even just seeing this photo is super exciting. Choosing a photo that best represents you, your intention, your vibe, however you want to put it out there is super, super important.
As everyone says, a picture can speak 1,000 words, but some can probably speak even more than 1,000, like yours.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we really just thought about like what are different ways that our program is currently serving these families and helping them with economic development. And one of the greatest ways is super straightforward. It's just creating mushroom kits or delivering mushroom kits and then teaching women how they can grow mushrooms in their own homes. It's kind of a set it and forget it situation. Once you've received the kits, we just go in, we train them on how to fill these plastic bags with different pieces of corn cob. So you prep the corn cob, you've got the plastic bag, and then you put all of the corn cobs into the bag. And then you have mycelium kits that you break apart and you sprinkle throughout the plastic bag as well. And then the next part is, of course, to tie it off. And then you just poke holes into the bag. And then within 3 to 5 weeks, you have these mushrooms that start coming out. One of the women that we work with, or one of our program members, she brought us in for a full demonstration, which was super exciting. And she just showed us that she usually creates anywhere from 2 to 3 of those bags. And then she tucks them away under her staircase, has a little curtain that she drapes over, and she just sets her timer and she just checks in on it 3 weeks and sometimes after. And then she's able to take those mushrooms and harvest them and then take them to market. And she receives anywhere from $1 to $2 at market for this thing that all she has to do is just go in, and she does it on a weekly basis. So she has a weekly harvest that she's pulling, and then she can go to the market and just receive income. So we thought, what better way to expand this than to be able to deliver mushroom kits to the families that we serve. On average, we serve anywhere from 275 families to 300 families each year. With that, 2 mushroom grow kits for 300 families came to about $15,000. So that's what really helped us to set this goal.
That's fantastic to hear the details of one person's story and then how it can expand and grow to really make a difference in so many lives.
Yeah, so there's a little bit more of a story here, and we just want to connect it first to the foundation of what the need is for the people that we serve. So again, just going back to different percentages for chronic malnutrition and what the need for food security is, and then talking a little bit about the organization as well, because our supporters may be forwarding this on to others who aren't familiar with the Seeds for a Future program. We want to pepper it with details about the organization and just make sure that they at least have some information going into the story. Then just sharing what our empowerment goal is. So they know what the need is, they know what the solution is. That's what we're outlining. The next thing is knowing what it'll take for us to implement that solution, and then what their ability to give will enact. That's something that was really helpful, as just breaking down piece by piece what the story and the narrative is that you want to share, best ways that you can get your purpose and your passion and your mission across, but keep it really short and succinct and straightforward. And then we were really grateful to have a donor who was open to just matching. Sometimes you can get, if you're working with different donors, sometimes they're very passionate about a specific program or campaign that you're launching. Ideally, they would be open to giving 100% match. That's a huge incentive for people to give because you're just paying it forward and doubling down. So doubling your impact. We were very, very fortunate to have someone who was willing to meet us at 40 cents per dollar that was raised, which was super exciting. So putting that out there is such a motivator or incentivizer for people who are maybe on the fence to think, all right, if I'm going to be able to get double the impact for the same amount, then why wouldn't I do this?
Yeah, the stats that Floyd and others at Give Butter have shared are that it increases giving by 3 to 5 times if you have a donor match.
Oh, that's so exciting. And then just reiterating the why behind what we're doing and why it's so essential to support these families today was really great. Just in a closing note, we wanted to give the invitation for people to join us and be a part of the work that we're doing and support it, but doing it alongside us, not necessarily doing it so they can observe. There's a really wonderful quote, and I can't think of who it comes from, but there are no passengers on this ship, only crew. So it's great to be able to welcome people to your crew so that they're all a part of it and we're all moving forward together.
I'm always grateful for these sessions. Every session is eye-opener, is insightful, and also impactful for me that I've learned. So I am Keturah from Nigeria, northern Nigeria specifically, where girls' education is a threat actually to men. One of the things she made mention is the pushback they experience where husband feel threatened by women empowerment, which is actually exactly what is happening here. Most of the times it's become threatening when you see a woman being empowered. And so men tend to see that as a threat. And that is why mostly the women are being denied access to empowerment. I'm from Girls Education Mission International. It's a non-profit organization founded by myself out of my life experience being almost dropped out from school at my last final year, and also against all the overwhelming odds of northern Nigeria, I was able to earn a bachelor degree before getting married, being the first young girl to do that in my community. So I established that organization in order to back and give back to my community. I'm yes, leaving this session loaded with more insight and being empowered with knowledge, with skills and experience. But one question I will ask, did I hear you said you are helping in developing strategies for end of year giving?
Yes. So working with ImaginePod and being part of this cohort from now until the end of the year. But I want to really quickly acknowledge a couple of things. One is that, yeah, it's really unfortunate when this machismo or male dominance exists within a culture, and it's a long and ongoing transition into understanding women as equals. But one of the things that is beautiful that we've seen here is that there are elder males who are stepping up and they're holding men's empowerment so that men understand they're empowered with knowledge about why it's so important to have women as their equal and being empowered as well, to be able to serve the family, to be able to serve themselves, and what that level of confidence means. It doesn't mean that the family dynamic has to shift dramatically. What it does mean is that the family is stronger when they work together. So just as we work together as a community to lift one another up, we have to be able to connect the dots for men who were raised in certain dynamics and help them understand and clearly demonstrate what a healthy household is when there are equal parts contributing to the overall whole. So I'm not sure if that exists in Nigeria right now or if it's catching fire, but that's something that's been really beautiful rather than completely discount women's empowerment, finding different ways to complement it so that we can all work collaboratively, which is really important. And then another thing that came up is when we talk about impact and how donors are paying for impact, one of the biggest things that we can think of, or an analogy that we can think of, is sending our children to school. So if you have children that we're sending to school, of course, we're paying for the classes and we're paying for the program execution. But what we're really paying for is just that confidence that they're going to walk away with a degree, that they're learning life skills that they'll be able to take with them further down the road. That means that that's a lifetime of experience, a lifetime of education and understanding that helps them think from a larger perspective. And that's essentially what donors are paying for. So, of course, the program is super important and they want to know how the programs are facilitated. But when it comes down to it, they're looking for the impact level. How are people going to be set up for success for the long term? And how does that connect with what they're investing in you as an organization and as a program? It's great to lean into that level of storytelling with impact and sharing direct testimonies, sharing those photos where we're still giving dignity and we're still giving the respect that's deserved to the communities that we serve. It's not taking photos of children who clearly are hungry or families that are clearly living in poverty. It's showing what can result from you giving the tools and the opportunity to families that are missing something, to show that they are resilient, to show that they will take an opportunity and they will make the absolute most of it. And they understand the importance of every tool that they're given and how to use it to lift their family from whatever the situation is that they currently exist within. That's one of the most important things as well, is telling their story and telling it from a place of respect and understanding. And again, talking about being the voice of the people that we serve, making sure that we speak about them with a dignity that they have and that we preserve that on their behalf. But those are just a couple of things that came from what you shared. And I'm just grateful that our conversation spoke to you so well.
And Keturah has a really great story of helping a girl develop as a woman and a student and go to college. That will be a great story to really highlight for impact. Now, in our couple of remaining minutes, I would love to see Iton, if you are able to pull over safely.
I volunteer at an organization called Encyclopedia about climate change and mental health and how it affects people. And usually every couple of weeks, we have new articles about climate change, young adults, and youth activism, community garden resource for all things climate and all things mental health. Like Leilani, I'm just scared to ask for, I guess, putting yourself out there as a fundraiser and like asking for the money. Again, growing up in Nigeria, it's very taboo. Asking people for money, as Keturah mentioned. What were some chance that you took when you were like, I need to do X, Y, Z to meet my goals? The ways that you motivated yourself to actually go out and ask donors and publicize your work.
One of the things that can hopefully shift your mindset is thinking that I literally will visualize my entire team here in Guatemala behind me, just supporting. So they're there and I am just channeling their dreams and their wishes forward. I know the data, I know the needs, I know our solution inside and out. And I know as leaders that we're all aware of all the details of everything from programming to operations to team to every aspect of our organizations. So just know that it lies within you and be prepared to share that in a way that speaks to and acknowledges where someone is meeting you, so that within those social cues, you're able to share little bits of information that fit the conversation well. It's not the only conversation that you'll have with them. We can always ask someone if we can follow up with them or share more information, which is super helpful. But also think about it as a way of sharing. And again, within those social cues, because you don't want to just word vomit all over someone and just tell them every single thing in a scarcity mindset. See it as just planting a seed and then think about how you can nurture that growth. If you come to them and you give them even just little bits of information, think about it as informing them. Maybe they'll act on it, maybe they won't. But the best that we can do is give them little bits of information that will either speak directly to them or inspire them enough to keep an eye out or an ear out in conversation, or when they're meeting with someone that is like an impact partner for them, to think about you and to think forward about you. Maybe they're curious and they want to know more. Or maybe it takes just a little bit of just checking in and saying, hey, we just completed our impact report and I really appreciated our conversation. I wanted to share this with you. Another thing is just feeling comfortable asking someone for their feedback. Hey, this is our program, and these are some of the difficulties that we're experiencing. These are some solutions that we're thinking about. Would you be open to sharing your knowledge and experience, just helping me to hone in on how this can be more impactful or connect better with donors or supporters? Thinking again from different perspectives and knowing it really is a long game. Even if you meet someone and it seems super, super exciting and they seem so passionate and into it, we don't know on the back end what information they need to feel super confident with donating. And more often than not, it takes somewhere between 1 year to a year and a half sometimes to develop those relationships, sometimes longer, to develop those relationships and get people really comfortable with you, with the program, and really just developing that trust and sharing examples of effective impact that they can take part in and really be part of the story with you before they're willing to give. It's about planting that seed, feeling confident and not working from a scarcity mindset, then just nurturing and just watering that seed over time and trusting and knowing that if it's not them that's going to invest or donate toward the cause, then it's potentially someone within their community because they're going to share by word of mouth.
The question was so good, and it affects so many people who are scared of rejection and fearful of making the ask. That is a gift that you gave by asking it, Iton. And the answer was so multi-layered and faceted and actionable that I'm really grateful. And yes to asking for feedback, for doing follow-ups and checking in.
Absolutely. There is a fundraising / executive coach who I've known and have just started working with, but I've known her for almost 2 years now, and she is absolutely amazing. Her name is Era Beal, and she's based out of Ohio. She has a lot of experience as an executive director herself, running very successful nonprofits in the Cleveland area. She was really great at fundraising, and she was really great at being able to connect purpose, passion, and mission to donor communications. She is someone that I think would be really wonderful for building our confidence and being able to share our stories more clearly, but also just understanding a little bit more about fundraising as a whole. And there are probably so many of these experts that you're welcoming to ImaginePod so that they can speak about their area of expertise. And I have no doubt that with her vast knowledge, we would be able to find an area that hasn't been covered yet and really dive into it with her.
Thank you all. This has been a beautiful small group to work with today and to have such a great conversation. I so appreciate you all. Thank you for being part of this in your evenings, and I look forward to seeing you all.
Thank you so much.